like a bell cut.
Hello and welcome back to the channel, where once again it's time for another Sega Saturn review, where today's game is one that I've been looking forward to covering on the channel. That game is Wipeout 2097. It saw release over here in the PAL region in September of 1997, after originally being released on the PlayStation in October of 1996. Interesting facts about this game are the fact that it didn't get released in North America on the Saturn, and it didn't get released in Japan until March of 1998. Now obviously the PlayStation version, built on the original Wipeout, made it much better pretty much in every single aspect. So of course we're looking forward today to seeing if the Saturn version can do the same. And like always, we'll be talking about how it looks, how it sounds, how it plays, content and lifespan, whether it's still worth playing today, and if it can potentially make our Sega Saturn top 10. So once the brilliant FMV intro is finished, you'll hit the main menu and see you've got race type, team selection, class and track, and options. Heading into options, we've got things like audio configuration, controller configuration, some basic preferences, loading and saving, and viewing your best arcade and time trial times.
3, 2, 1, go.
Like always, I'm going to start with visuals first, and like the original Wipeout, which was a pretty decent looking game for the time, Wipeout 2097 is a very good looking game also. In my eyes, it's one of the very best looking 3D games on the system, and if not the best, then one of the very best looking 3D racing games on the system as well. It really does improve on the original in every single regard visually, which is a fantastic testament to Psygnosis for the effort they put in to bring this over from the PlayStation and get it looking as good as possible. In terms of the courses, they all vary visually in terms of their style, which gives it a great sense of appeal in that regard. The ships as well are of good quality, just like all of the special effects within the game as well. They are of a much higher quality than the original Wipeout game. All the weapon effects, the lasers coming out of the rear of your ship, although they're mesh effect transparencies, they are as good as mesh effect transparencies can be, in my opinion. So I'm not really going to heavily criticize them. I know lots of people will know that I don't like mesh transparencies, but these ones are about as good as you could possibly get, I feel, on the Saturn, and they're actually pretty decent. Draw distance as well on this game has been improved on the original Wipeout. Yes, there's still a bit of pop-up, but it's not too noticeable, especially when you're concentrating on all the turns in the tracks. You really won't notice that pop-up too much in the distance. Even the visual aspect of the menus has been improved on Wipeout 2097 as well, so it really is just a slightly more polished, accomplished game than the original Wipeout, and it has been improved on the original Wipeout in pretty much every single regard. There's only really one negative thing I'd point out visually, and that's the fact that some of the courses are slightly dark in places, darker than the PlayStation version, and we've seen this lots of times with 3D games that saw releases on the Saturn and the PlayStation. The Saturn version tends to be a little bit darker in the color palette, and I don't really know why. I never have, but that really is the only negative thing I can say visually. Other than that, Wipeout 2097 on the Saturn is a very, very good looking game. So moving on to the sound effects and music next, and thankfully it's more good stuff here, because one of the criticisms I had from the original Wipeout on the Saturn was the fact the game seemed slightly devoid of sound effects. It just didn't have enough, and it zapped some of the atmosphere away from the races. Thankfully, Psygnosis have done a much better job here, because there are more sound effects throughout the whole entire game, whether it's hitting the walls, using your weapons, the craft themselves. There is more sound effects through and through, and the game benefits for it massively. Now, in terms of the soundtrack, you don't have the same soundtrack as the PlayStation version. That had licensed music from a variety of bands. This game has got a completely original soundtrack, and I actually think the game benefits for it, because the music is designed specifically for this game, and it fits the game brilliantly. Much like the Wipeout soundtrack did in the original game, this one fits this game fantastically as well. It's more techno, futuristic style music. It's not personally my favorite style of music, but it fits the game very, very much so. And the tracks, they're long, lengthy tracks. They don't just repeat after 2 minutes. They will last pretty much the whole entire race, regardless of whether you're on a 2-lap, 4-lap, whatever race. So that's really good as well. So what I will do is what I always do, give you a few examples so you can decide for yourselves how good you think the music is within Wipeout 2097. So moving on to the gameplay next, and in that regard it's fairly similar to the original Wipeout. You start in last place in every race and you have to try and work your way into first position and win the race. You can use weapons or protective items or boosters to gain advantage on your opponents. You can go into the pit lane and recover energy as well. So in that regard it's fairly similar. We've got new items though, which include the Quake Disruptor, which is a fantastic item which sends ripples up the tracks to inflict damage on the other opponents. But for me the biggest thing is the fact the game is just tighter to control and it's better for it. The camera is much more stable. I feel in the original game that was a big drawback for me. It seemed to drift from side to side too much and it made the game harder to control. This game, it's much better to control. The game benefits for it. It's got a much better learning curve as well. You don't have to seemingly be a professional quality player to win the races like I felt you needed to be on the original Wipeout. You can come in here, you can make mistakes, but as long as you concentrate, you can make up those mistakes and catch a craft back up that are in front of you. So the game is much more accessible for people overall. Now I sat here whilst I was playing the game in all fairness trying to think of any possible weaknesses for the way it plays, but it's really difficult to criticise Wipeout 2097 because I feel it plays really well. It tweaks the weaker points of the first game. It gives you a gradual increase in challenge with the difficulties all the way up to Phantom Class, which is a massive challenge should you want to win those races, and it really does exactly what I want a sequel in a racing game to do gameplay wise. And overall I feel Wipeout 2097 is a very strong game in the gameplay department. So moving on to content and lifespan next, we've got two modes of play, arcade and time trial at the start of the game. We've got 4 craft to choose from, with 1 additional one being able to be unlocked. We've got 6 standard tracks and 2 additional tracks that can be unlocked as well. And we've got 4 different difficulties when you unlock all of those as well. Should you successfully gain gold medals in the first 6 tracks, you will unlock the Challenge 1 mode, win that, and you will unlock Challenge 2 mode, and that can be very difficult to win. There's no denying about that. So there is content within the game, much better than the original Wipeout as well. I feel it's really strong in this area. As well as that, we've got a few cheat codes as well that we can access within this game. We've got an exclusive wireframe mode for the Saturn to give you those Tempest style graphics should you want to experience that. Trust me, it's quite difficult to play the game like this though, because it gets quite confusing because you can't really tell what exactly is what on the tracks. As well as that, we've got an animal cheat code, which means all of the craft are replaced with different animals. This was a real popular thing in racing games in the mid-90s to the late 90s. We've seen it with the Daytona games and Manx TT where you could race as different animals. It's on Wipeout as well. But without a doubt, my favorite cheat code in the game is the machine gun code, where your item is simply a permanent machine gun and you can blast around the tracks, gunning down all your opponents, making them all explode and eliminating them from the race. There is a genuine sense of fun and excitement doing this. Without a doubt, that is my favorite code within the game, and it brings me immense pleasure gunning down all the other ships. Of course, there is one downside in the lifespan department. You know what I'm going to say. Wipeout 2097 does not have any kind of multiplayer mode at all, not even anything taken in turns. There is simply no 2-player at all within Wipeout 2097. If you had the PlayStation version, you could do link up 2-player arcade and time trial. That is completely null and void in the Saturn version. It is a 1-player only experience. So that does bring down the lifespan of the game slightly, but because there is a reasonable amount of content within the game anyway, I still feel it is strong in the content and lifespan department too. So like always, our final questions are, is Wipeout 2097 still worth playing today, and does it make our Sega Saturn top 10? Without a doubt, Wipeout 2097 is still worth playing today. It is the best, if not one of the very best racing games on the system. It really is. It improves on the original in every single way. It does exactly what I want a sequel to do. Better graphics, better sound effects, tighter gameplay, more content, especially as you're trying to go through those difficulty settings, practicing and perfecting your air braking as you try and win that Challenge 2 mode. It really does it all spot on, and I can't really fault Wipeout 2097 in any other way other than saying it's not got a 2-player mode. That's the only downside the game has, and it's such a brilliant game overall. Now, the fantastically difficult question is, does it make our Sega Saturn top 10. You'll see the top 10 going up the screen now, and it's full of really good games. Sega Rally's not even in the top 10 anymore. You see Panzer Dragoon Saga and Resident Evil down there in 9 and 10 spot, and you know that Wipeout 2097 has a massive challenge to get into the top 10, and I ummed and ahed about it for a long time, but I just don't think it can displace any of the games in the top 10 because they are really, really good quality games. I think Wipeout 2097 would probably be 11 or 12 if I was rating it with all the games that I've reviewed so far. It's that close to the top 10. It's a fantastic game. Like I said, I think it's probably the best racing game on the system. I think it's actually better than Sega Rally, in my opinion. It's a top quality racing game. But of course, they're just my thoughts and my thoughts alone. I want to hear everybody else's opinions on Wipeout 2097. What did you think of it when it came out? It came out nearly a year after the PlayStation version, in all fairness, and a lot of people who'd already played it wouldn't really need to go out and buy the Saturn version because it's basically the same minus the 2-player option on the link up. So let me know your thoughts down below on Wipeout 2097. Like always, I'll be back in the near future with some more reviews. Goodbye for now.